Week 2, day number 10. Our Eagles camp recap with Football 24/7 NFL insider John McMullen. The end of a long day for you, John McMullen, and I think it's holding true. The days get longer and the nights get shorter, but today was the culmination of the first 2 weeks of camp, an open practice at the link where the fans had an opportunity to come out.
Yeah, about 26,000 of them, pretty full in the first deck. And it was interesting. I remember when they started these things back in the Chip Kelly days, and there were, I think in Chip's first practice at Lincoln Financial Field, there were over 40,000. So it's gone down a little bit. I'm a little bit surprised there weren't more because obviously the pandemic, new coach, new quarterback. But I think the fans are smart and they kind of realize they've been hearing, generally these things go 75 minutes, hour and a half. They actually they had the longest practice of the summer, about hour and 50 minutes because the fans were there. So they got a little bit more, but Philadelphia fans are smart. They said it's not that big of a deal, but still 26,000 of them showed up.
Give us the visual, John. What was it like? Zach Ertz got a big applause when his name was announced. What was some of the other festivities that was playing out down at the link tonight?
It's still not what it was before the pandemic. Back in the old days, everybody was on the field as far as the media and that kind of thing. We could watch practice. Today, we had to be up in the press box. And, before pre-pandemic, players would stand around and sign autographs on the sort of the outer bowl. That can't happen anymore. So we're not quite back to normal, but I got to tell you, after watching football last year in an empty stadium, there were a couple of games, remember, where they let a few fans in before scaling back again. It's fun. It's fun to have some juice, and I think, you could tell the players, especially the offense. We talked a lot about how poorly they performed yesterday. Had a bit of a bounce back, and I think the energy and the juice had something to do with that.
John, you said the practice tonight at the link lasted how long?
About an hour and 50 minutes, which would be the longest practice of the summer so far. Generally, they've gone from as low as 75 minutes to about an hour and a half, so a little bit more. And we got to talk to Nick Sirianni before the practice, so we didn't get a chance to ask him about it after, but I assume they wanted to give the fans that were there a little bit extra, but they're not going to go too far. So hour and 50 minutes, and got a lot of teamwork in as they usually did, and fans got to get excited a few times.
Did they give the fans a lot of offensive work? And did the offensive unit, first team unit, get a lot more work out on the field?
No, I think from a rep standpoint, no, it's the same as what they typically get. You're not going to over correct anything, whether it's because of a bad practice or whether it's because there are fans in the stands. Nick Sirianni always brings up, he probably saw him when he hit the dais a couple weeks ago. He hit the podium, and he was talking about Frank Reich when he started 1-5 in Indianapolis, and he slammed the table and said, "You got to double down. You got to stick with your process." So he's not going to overcorrect things.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen, checking in with our Eagles camp recap, day number 10. Sunday night. Week 2 comes to a close with an open practice down at Lincoln Financial Field. John, let's follow up a little bit on our conversation about Jalen Hurts from yesterday, where it was not a good practice for the offense and not a good practice for Jalen Hurts. But candidly, are we supposed to sit here and expect Jalen to be perfect, expect him to not go through overthrows and miss throws, or is that what should be happening in camp?
Yeah. I mean, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes in training camp. A lot of quarterbacks, if you think about the old sentiment from baseball, you see a lot of great pitchers will get, beaten up a little bit in spring training because they use it to work on some things. So if they want to add a pitch to their repertoire, they'll work on it in the grapefruit league, something of that nature. And if you don't understand that, you say, wow, so and so gave up 10 runs, he's working on something. It's not important to win the game or to get people out. You're just working. Practice is the same way. If you're going to push the envelopes, Carson Wentz used to say this all the time. You do it in practice. You try to see what you can get done, what you can't get done. So everybody makes mistakes in practice. That's where you want to make mistakes. That's where you want to grow. I don't think that part of it, no one expects perfection. Um, but you also have to be realistic in the fact that to date, Jalen hasn't been that consistent from throw to throw, not consistent with his mechanics, uh, occasional decision-making issues. And, you have to be realistic about that as well. So I wouldn't push the panic button, but there's certainly uh, questions that need to be answered. And he'd be the first to tell you he needs to improve. And Nick Sirianni will probably be the second to tell you he needs to improve.
When you spoke to head coach Nick Sirianni before the practice, was there discussion about Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, and there was discussion about the poor practice on Saturday, and Nick said it wasn't as bad as it looked from, when he looked at the film. I think he was like a lot of us when he left the field and thought it was a really poor session. And then he went and looked at the film and there was still some positives. I don't know if he's trying to be optimistic. It was pretty bad practice. Uh, but as I said on yesterday's show, I think you kind of flush it down the toilet and go to the next day. And I think it was much better today. So I think that's a good sign that it was just an outlier. It was just a bad day. Everybody has bad days. The offense had a bad day. Today, Quez Watkins really stepped up from the receiver position. Jalen had a great throw to Travis Fulgham. It's throws where he proves he can do it. And then you say, well, where's that? Where's the consistency? And I think that's the more important part. It's got to be more consistent.
Listening to that applause that Zach Ertz received when he was introduced, you have to wonder, when will he no longer be a Philadelphia Eagle? Or for some strange reason, will he be on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think Howie is playing sort of the game he did when he was able to trade Sam Bradford and Carson Wentz's rookie season. If you think about, people kind of forget the plan was that Sam was going to start, and then all of a sudden there was an injury, and the Eagles had tremendous leverage and were able to turn him into a first-round pick. Um, It's not the same at the tight end position. Obviously, it's not as important a position, but if a tight end gets injured somewhere on a contender, maybe Howie gets some leverage and he can work a deal that way as we go farther into the summer. And if he doesn't, Zach Ertz is going to play out his contract. So it's still to be determined. I can tell you, though, that Nick Sirianni is getting to the point because of how poor his receivers have generally played throughout camp. As I've mentioned, he's kind of defaulting to what Doug Peterson typically did. And that was, he wanted, and I'm talking about Doug, he wanted to get more receivers on the field. They just weren't good enough. And he defaulted to his tight ends, Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, because they were good players. And I think Nick Sirianni is getting to that point as well, in realizing if Zach is going to be here, he's got to play him because he's better than the receivers he has.
John, what kind of first 2 weeks from an offensive standpoint has Dallas Goedert had so far in camp?
Yeah, I don't think it's been splashy. I think Zach has made more plays in the passing game. But he hasn't been bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think a lot of it is what I just said, the inconsistency of the quarterback position and what that has been. But if you're going, because remember, the Eagles are kind of flip-flopping a tight end, even if Zach is here, Dallas Goedert is the one who's going to play more. And I think that is still the plan. However, Zach has been better as a receiver in training camp. Now, there's other parts of that position. Dallas is a much, much better blocker than Zach Ertz, so that plays into it as well. So I would say not a splashy summer for Dallas Goedert, but he's certainly not played poorly.
Staying on the receivers, Johnny Mac, Quez Watkins had another good practice. Is he moved ahead of Jalen Reagor? Is he now staking his own claim on offense?
Well, he's staking his claim, but I don't know if he could jump Jalen Reagor or even Travis Fulgham for that matter. He's played better than they have, but again, we talk about it a lot. We talked about it at left tackle with Andre Dillard. Jalen's a first-round pick. He's going to get the benefit of the doubt, and that will continue. But Quez has played better since he's gotten back from his illness. And that continued today. He had another good day. But typically he plays a lot with the second and third team. You have to put that into the equation as well, whereas Jalen and Travis Fulgham get more reps against the first team defense. So you always have to weigh all of that into the equation. What I will say is that Quez is lapping the second tier receivers. So the JJ Arcega-Whitesides, the John Hightowers, who's now injured and out of the lineup, and players like that. He's clearly the leader of the second tier. But I don't think he's pushing Jalen Reagor or even Travis Fulgham.
Quez also is the recipient of a John McMullen preseason game ball, I do believe. So he does have that as well after 2 weeks of camp.
Yeah, and he's going to get another one. A little foreshadowing.
Okay, so we'll look ahead to that before we wrap up on Football 24/7 with John McMullen across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. A couple of last thoughts on the offense as they get ready to begin what is week number 3. And of course, on Thursday, John, preseason game number 1, Steelers come into town. Does anything change over the next couple of days in prep or in anticipation of the game on Thursday?
No, there's no game planning this time of year in preseason. So I think, I kind of explained it with spring training baseball. You go into these, especially these early preseason games, maybe a little bit, and we'll see. Obviously, they've scaled back the preseason to only 3 games instead of 4, but typically that third preseason game would be the so-called dress rehearsal. Uh, you're just trying to work on your stuff. You're not worried about the opponent. You just want to get good work in against another NFL team. It's not about getting your defense ready to play Ben Roethlisberger and company, and vice versa. Um, it's just an opportunity to get more good repetitions against a different opponent in a live environment. And, you can figure out a lot, especially about young players, when it's live. And we know in training camp, there's rarely tackling to the ground. There hasn't been in Nick's camp so far. He said he was still deciding if he was going to have some live periods. Looks like he's not going to. Chip Kelly never had a live period. Doug Peterson had a few each summer. So these preseason games are valuable from that perspective.
John, how many reps will the first team get on Thursday night? Jalen Hurts will be in there how long?
Yeah, I mean, Nick hasn't said. He'll probably say that's Tuesday. Give us a little bit more information. I can't imagine he would play because he's such a young quarterback. Typically, say if Carson Wentz was still here, you might get a series or two, depending how the first series went. You probably want to get Jalen Hurts a little bit more work because he needs the reps. But if you want to see Jalen Hurts, I will say, make sure you're in your seat and don't get a beverage, don't get a sandwich, because it's going to turn over pretty quickly.
Everything you wanted to know about what happened in Eagles training camp right here every night following camp. Tonight is the end of week 2, day number 10. With Football 24/7's John McMullen, of course, Birds 365. We'll be right back at it tomorrow. Jody Mack, Jeff Kerr in for Johnny Mack as he will be right back down in South Philadelphia tomorrow. John, the schedule for the week leading up to Thursday, what is it?
Only one major practice, and that's Tuesday before the game. They got a couple walkthroughs also going on this week. So a little bit scaled back because you have the game environment. The last major practice Tuesday morning. And then, we'll see actual live football against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday.
Let's talk about before we say goodbye and get your game ball. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. Every time the conversation comes up, the defense looks much better than the offense. The defense is ahead of the offense. Alex Singleton back in off the COVID list. He spoke today. He had reps with the first team. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, Alex was back at practice yesterday, Saturday, almost had an interception. So he was right back with the first team, his first practice. I think that was a positive for him. He tested positive. He did say, in fact, I asked him the question, he was vaccinated. So it's sort of whatever you want to call it, that breakthrough infection. So he had to sit out in quarantine. I think the biggest, issue for him was trying to get, work in from a conditioning standpoint because he couldn't come in to the facility until he was cleared. But, anybody knows Alex, he keeps himself in great shape to begin with. So he seemed ready to go. And yeah, I mean, he's going to fit in, it looks, with Eric Wilson. I think Davion Taylor had an opportunity, but his injury, his calf injuries kind of set him back. So I think we are where we thought we were going to be at the linebacker position, and that's Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton with the first team.
Team practices tomorrow, Tuesday walkthroughs. What happens on Wednesday, John? Practice again before the game Thursday. What's the full schedule for the week?
Now walkthroughs Monday, Wednesday, full practice Tuesday. And yeah, game on. You never have a full practice the day before a game, so they'll walk through, do some things. But the only real traditional practice this week is Tuesday, and that's where you have the full scale practice to get ready for the game.
Pads on Tuesday?
Still to be determined. Obviously, Nick doesn't announce that kind of stuff. I if I were to guess, probably he'll be in shells, but that's just a guess.
John, how many players spoke today on Zoom, and why were you on Zoom today?
3 players. It was Fletcher Cox, Alex Singleton, Jason Kelsey. We were on Zoom because of the stadium, and there's still protocol issues. The fact that they were having the practice in the stadium, they still are working out those details as we get closer to the regular season. So, as I said, they didn't want a large portion of media on the field, so we had to do it via Zoom. That is supposed to change in the regular season. But a lot of this is out of the Eagles' hands, and it's more of NFL league mandates.
John, anything specific for the fans being in the building, getting in the building? Was there anything that they didn't expect?
Yeah, I don't know. You would have to ask the fans. Actually, there's no mask at this stage, but they recommend, obviously, strongly, if you haven't been fully vaccinated, to wear a mask and that type of thing. As far as, social distancing, there wasn't any of that. So hopefully, but again, that's not really up to the Eagles. That's more of a local government, city of Philadelphia. And if they scale back and say you have to wear a mask, you have to wear a mask and all that stuff. So most of that is just, and the Eagles will always tell you, it's all fluid. It could change tomorrow.
All right, Johnny Mac, before we say goodnight on this Sunday night and let you wrap up your day, your game ball from the long practice at the link tonight.
Yeah, it's Quez Watkins. I mean, he made the play of the day, which was basically a 50-50 ball, and he went over, high pointed the football over Anthony Harris, and by far the largest roar of the action. I think the largest roar was, as you mentioned earlier, was probably for Zach Ertz coming out onto the field. But as far as the actual playing, I think Quez had the biggest play of the day. And by the way, it was more than that, his consistency, as I said. As far as receivers go in this camp, he has been the Eagles' best receiver, which is a bit of a surprise, to say the least.
Any further updates from the team on Devontae Smith?
Yeah, Devontae's still week to week. So, injury-wise, couple positives. Brandon Brooks was back in a limited fashion, so he did some individual work, wasn't in team drills. Isaac Seumalo got upgraded from week to week to day, so he's getting closer. Devontae is still in the week-to-week category with the sprained MCL in his knee, and they're going to be very, very cautious with an eye on week 1. They're not going to push Devontae Smith.
All right, good stuff from John McMullen tonight across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Once again, we thank everybody for tuning in to get the very latest, our Eagles camp recap with John McMullen. Week 2, day number 10. Week 2 comes to a close. Week 3 quickly begins right back tomorrow, and we will be right back here tomorrow night. And Johnny Mac, I believe your day will start with an appearance tomorrow morning on Birds 365.
Yeah, just got to make sure to hit that alarm. But I'm always up, Chris.
You'll be up,
Body
Johnny
clock.
Mac.
Body
All right.
clock.
Good stuff from John McMullen. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Until next time, good night, everybody.